Hello and welcome to the Cavendish Rentals private client webinar, giving you everything you need to know about the Renters' Rights Act. So for those of you who don't know who we are, my name's David Adams and I'm the Managing Director of Cavendish Rentals.
And hi, I'm Nicola Blake. I'm the Operations Director here at Cavendish Rentals. We've both worked here for over 20 years, so got lots of experience between us.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's if you combine our experience, it's nearly 50 years, isn't it? Which all sounds a bit frightening, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes us feel really old. Um, and I think, yeah, we've for those who don't know us, and lots of clients will know us very well, but for those who don't, yes, we've been part of the furniture for many years, and we've seen a lot of change, haven't we? And this is just another one of those changes. And now, obviously, this webinar is just for clients. We're not sending this out anywhere else. It's not a marketing webinar or you know going to any self-managed landlords. It's very much it's our clients who use our fully managed service. And what we wanted to do is just record a quick update. So it's probably going to be 15, 20 minutes at the very most, just to sort of really bring you up to date on what changes are coming, what we're going to be doing to change our systems to support you, and then what action you need to take, if any. And obviously after this, so it's not a live webinar. We've recorded this on the 22nd of January, 2026. And if there's any questions following this, what we're going to do is there will be a link in the email that we send you, but also on the YouTube clip, because this is a private YouTube clip that we've recorded. There'll be a link there where you can book a call with us. So if you've got any questions at all, we're more than happy to have a one-to-one chat with you. You can come into the office, or it can be on Zoom, or it can be over the phone. So don't worry. Don't by any means don't watch this and think, oh, I'm really on my own here. I've got loads of questions. If you do have, book a chat with us. This is what we are here for. We are your agents. We're here to look after you and your interests. So what we really want to do is just put your mind at rest of what the changes are and what we're going to do. So I've got a slide deck that we're going to go through. So I'm just going to share my screen and we shall go through it. Let's move us out of the way there. Okay, present. There we go. Right, let's move us down there. Right, so
Great.
Renters' Rights Act private client webinar.
Yeah, so let's get straight into it. So this first slide just tells you what is going to be changing in the Renters' Rights Act. So if you're not sure about what's happening with the Renters' Rights Act, it was enacted back in October with an implementation date for a few things. Firstly, on the 27th of December, just gone. And then the big bang date really is where most things change over is from the 1st of May. So we'll just run you through the slides and talk through each point on that slide. So the first one, it looks a bit scary. It says Section 21 Section 21 notices are going to be abolished. It's not the worst thing in the world. It just means that we just need to be a bit more specific when we're serving notice to your tenant if you want your tenant to leave. So typically you would serve a Section 21 notice and you wouldn't normally have to give a reason as to why you want the property back. But when things change from the 1st of May, we have to serve notice under what's called Section 8 notice, and we have to cite a specific ground as to why you want the property back. So if you want to sell it, you can do that. If you want to move back in, then that would be another ground for moving in, for serving notice. If there are rent arrears, again, that would be a ground for serving notice. So you can use all of those grounds to do that. Notice periods are increasing, and there's different notice periods for whichever ground that you're thinking of using. Typically, if you're going to be moving back in, it's going to be a 4-month notice that you'll need to issue. If the tenant has rent arrears, it's 3 weeks notice.
Yep, 3 weeks notice.
Yeah.
That's the latest guidance.
That's increased slightly from the previous 2. But whenever it comes to the point, if you need to end the tenancy for any reason, then everybody's fully trained and will be able to guide you on the specific notice and ground that you need to use to do that. Or we will obviously do it for you.
Yeah. And I think to add to this, I mean, many years ago, I say many years ago, it's not actually that long ago, is it? But actually, Section 21 is, in the grand scheme of things, is fairly a new thing because it wasn't that long ago that actually all notices were Section 8, weren't they? And yes, we had to put a reason for that notice. And I think almost in the last sort of 10, 15 years or so, Section 21 has become an easy route to possession because it's like a no embarrassment notice. You don't have
Mm.
to put a reason. If the tenant isn't behaving or they're not paying the rent on time, rather than almost shame them and put a reason for it and go down the sort of formal Section 8 route where we've almost hidden behind the Section 21 to not cause embarrassment. And I think all this is we're just going back to the way things were, which worked very well at the time, and we have to give a reason. Something to add to this is that, sorry, so on that point, actually, just to cap that off, if a landlord wants possession of their property, it's usually because the tenant isn't paying, um, they want to sell the property, or they want to move back in, or and if any of those things happen, you can still get possession. We just have to serve a different notice. So I think the headlines really have encapsulated this. Section 21, abolition, no fault eviction is going, which means landlords are going to lose their powers. But really, when we drill down into it, it's not as bad as it seems. Something just to note, though, that for anyone thinking of selling their rental property after the implementation date, which is the 1st of May, so if anyone looking to sell their property after the 1st of May, and they're looking to serve notice with the reason being that you're selling the property, if that is the case, you can't re-let the property for 1 year. Now, what that means is it's quite common, perhaps, that a landlord will serve notice on the tenant. They'll serve a Section 21 currently, and they will put the property on the market for sale. And let's say they'll give it 2 months, 3 months, test the water. If it hasn't sold for whatever reason, then it's quite common for a landlord to go, we'll just carry on letting it. Now, as of the 1st of May, you won't be able to do that for 1 year. So I think what will happen is it will, if landlords want to sell the property with vacant possession, it will really force the landlord to do so, as in they will have to commit to that and potentially, if it doesn't work out, suffer a 1 year void period. Or we do have a solution for that, which we've done increasingly over the last couple of years, which is sell rental properties off market with tenants in situ, where we don't put them on Rightmove. We don't have to serve notice on the tenant. Basically, if you want to sell your rental property, if you let us know, we will discreetly market that to our landlord database and try and get another landlord to buy it from you. And therefore, you keep your rent up until completion. So I do think we've been doing that quite a bit over the last couple of years, and we've had a lot of success with that method. I do think that method of selling rental properties will become a lot more common going forward. So just to cap that off, if anyone, after the 1st of May, yes, if you want to sell it with vacant possession, you will have to commit to it and you can't re-let in a year. But if you sell it with a tenant in and you're not serving notice, you can still do that off market. So if that's of interest, speak to us about that separately.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of that is obviously if you do that, go down that route, you've got rent paid up until the point of completion, and then the investor obviously has the rent straight away as well. So
It's
it's
quite a good way. Yeah.
yeah,
So if perhaps you're one of our clients thinking, actually, I'm in a position where I want to buy more properties. Very common, actually. I think at the moment, what we're seeing is accidental landlords are getting out the market, but your professional portfolio landlords are actually seeing this as a real good opportunity to expand their rental portfolio. I think, again, the media paint this picture that landlords are exiting the market, but what it doesn't tell you is that actually a lot of landlords are getting into the market at the same time. So I think we're seeing a real shift. So yeah, if you're a landlord looking to increase your portfolio, again, speak to us because we do have quite a few properties that we are looking to sell off market to other investors. And from your point of view, if you buy a property with a tenant in situ, if you complete on a Friday and the rent comes in the following Wednesday, you've got a return on investment straight away. And we do a compliance audit on the property prior to sale. So these are fully compliant tenancies. If you buy a vacant possession property and you complete one day, you might need to do a bit of a refurb to it. You might need to decorate it. You'll have to pay a letting agent like us to actually let the property. So that's a cost. Get it all compliant, and it might take a few weeks to let. And what you might find is you complete one day and actually you don't see any rent for a couple of months because you've been getting it ready to let, and then the tenant doesn't want to move in for a few weeks. So actually, buying tenanted properties is a really good way to increase your portfolio. So if that's of interest, please speak to us separately. We're more than happy to have a chat about that.
great. Let's go to the next slide. So this one, removal of fixed terms. So typically, if you've had a tenant move in, they would have gone in on an initial fixed term of 6 or 12 months, and then you would either have renewed the contract or it will have rolled onto a periodic beyond that point. So from the 1st of May, all tenancies will be periodic, and they will be periodic from day one. So what this means is that there won't be any option to renew tenancies. They will just be open-ended. So they will run until either party serves notice. So if a tenant needs to vacate, they will have to actually give 2 months' notice as opposed to the standard 1 month's notice that they give now. So there is a lengthened notice period on both sides, really. From once the existing tenancies move on to the new regime, a written statement will need to be provided on or before the 31st of May 2026 if there isn't already a tenancy agreement in writing. Now, all of our tenancies that we manage, I've been through them all, I've checked them all. They've all got signed tenancy agreements in writing, so that side is covered. What we will need to issue the tenants with is what's going to be called an information leaflet. Now, that's going to be provided to us by the government around March time. So as soon as that comes out, we will issue it to the tenant as we need to. We can email it out, we can post it to them, so that will be taken care of. A point to note on the removal of fixed terms as well, just from a landlord point of view, it may be periodic from day one, but the tenant does have the right to occupy for a minimum of 12 months. So they have got protection from eviction for at least 12 months
12
in that
months,
property. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a few people, clients of ours have approached us, and I know you had you had one of our clients had a conversation the other day, didn't you? And one of his concerns, and there might be a few people thinking this as well, hence why I mention it, is that are we going to get into a a culture maybe of a tenant moving into a property, staying there for a couple of months and then leaving, and almost treating it like an Airbnb, like a short-term accommodation. I honestly don't think that we're going to see that in Chester. I think if you're we're quite pally with a letting agent in Cornwall, aren't we? One of the biggest letting agents in Cornwall. They're friends of ours, and I think for them, they're quite worried about that because obviously Cornwall is a very big tourist destination. I think if we had a lot of properties down the Welsh coast, that might be an issue maybe. But I think in Chester, for the type of stock that we manage, I don't think that'll be an issue, because if that did happen, and to your property, and it was a tenant, or multiple tenants were using it as a short-term accommodation, they're only staying a few months, well, naturally the rent would have to go up, wouldn't it? And actually, because if you're paying, let's say, £1,000 a month for a two-bedroom apartment in Chester, well, if you were renting that as a short-term let, you'd probably be paying £4,000 a month or something, wouldn't you? So yeah, I don't foresee that being a major issue, but obviously, if that did become an issue with your particular property, I think it would just cause a massive surge in rent.
And also, I think like tenants don't tend to move into properties and then move out straight away. The average tenancy length is probably about 18 months to 2 years now. So tenants are staying longer than perhaps they used to 5, 6 years ago. So
One of the most common reasons for a tenant moving at the moment. So when we do viewings with tenants who want to view one of our properties, quite commonly the reason they're moving is because their landlord's moving back in, their landlord's selling, and one of their questions is this a long-term let? Everyone wants long-term let. It's very uncommon that someone wants a short-term let these days,
right.
isn't it?
Yeah. Let's go on to the next slide.
Tenants' rights, yeah.
Yes. So, the Renters' Rights Act does bring about more enhanced rights for tenants, but I think in some ways it helps tenants, in other ways it doesn't. But the next section is to do with rent increases. So typically at the moment in our contract, we have a clause which says every year the rent will increase by usually CPI or inflation. And that's kind of the clause that we have to go by to increase the rent. But after May, we won't be able to rely on that clause anymore. It will become a void clause. And the only way that a rent will be able to be increased is by issuing a Section 13 notice. So this is a notice which will be in prescribed form. It will say what the rent currently is, what the rent's going to increase to, and we have to give the tenant 2 months' notice of that increase. What we really need to be careful of is making sure that we are doing our research and making sure that the rents are increased by no more than market value. Because there is the risk that the tenant can challenge a rent increase if they think it's unfair through a tribunal. And that can be a lengthy process. And once it gets to a tribunal, the tenant could ask for a rent increase to be backdated, even if the tribunal found in the landlord's favour to a certain date. So there could be a delay on getting that rent increase. So we're going to develop a proper rent increase process whereby we'll make sure we run the correct comparables for the rental property in that area and see what the market rent is. Obviously, discuss with you to get your opinion as well, and then we'll take our care to issue that notice to the tenant. What I do see it as a positive in some ways, because I know quite a lot of landlords. You might choose not to increase the rent for many years, and you may have found that the rent has perhaps fallen a little bit below market value. So instead of being stuck by a clause that says you can only increase by inflation, and a couple of years ago inflation was at 10% and now it's at 3.5. I think it was the other day.
Yeah.
So if you've not increased the rent for a few years and you've missed that 10% window, you can only increase by 3.5% now, which would still leave you short. So from when this comes in, we can just make sure it's increased to market value.
I think what this will do is almost perhaps sharpen us to, well, not sharpen us, but sharpen the industry, sharpen landlords' minds to let's be a bit more proactive with rent increases. I think it's very common. We've heard time and time again, perhaps landlords reluctant to increase the rent because they're a good landlord. And I get that, because we don't want to be scaring the life out of the tenants, because you don't want a void period. A void period is one of the most costly things that can happen to a tenancy, to a landlord.
That's it. If you've got a good tenant, they pay on time, they're looking after the property, you might think, well, I'd rather that than the void period, but by increasing the rent. So every time a rent increase is due, we have in our system, we have a reminder date that comes up. So we will always contact you and ask you if you want to do the rent increase, and then we can talk you through that process if that's how you want to go with it.
And so I wrote an article about this on LinkedIn the other day, that looking at some data, so from 2020 to now, rents in Chester have increased by 36%. And quite a lot of landlords I know perhaps haven't increased their rent maybe for 5, 6, 7 years. So there's quite a few people that we've spoken to recently who perhaps are getting half what they could get. So our advice would be to have a conversation with the tenant. Obviously, we do that on your behalf as a fully managed client. Even if you're not going to increase the rent annually, we need to acknowledge it and have that conversation. And our advice would never be to put the rent up to certainly over market rate or even market rate. I'd say at the end of the day, if you've got a tenant, it's important to do an increase, but it doesn't have to be to market rate. Slightly under is fine, because you've got to get that balance right. So again, if you're watching this and perhaps you haven't increased the rent for many years, have a chat with us. Because you might be leaving some money on the table, so to speak, and increase costs, and you need to be making a profit.
That's it. We can work on getting a satisfactory resolution for both you and the tenant, so that everybody's happy that way as well. So,
quite a lot of tenants actually. Just to finish on that point, when rental inflation was when inflation was sort of circa 11-12% back in 22, 23. We were putting quite a lot of rents up, by 10%, which was a big jump. And most of the tenants' reaction to us, believe it or not, was I can't believe you haven't done this sooner. And actually telling us to thank the landlord, for looking after them for so long and not increasing the rent, perhaps, during the pandemic time. So it's not always an awkward conversation. So if you're unsure, have a chat with us.
Yeah, definitely. Move on to the next one.
Pets and lets.
Pets and lets, yes. And so what came out of the Renters' Rights Act as well is that tenants should be able to have the right to have a pet in their property.
Yeah.
So now they might move in and say they haven't got a pet, but they're allowed to, during the tenancy, request permission for a pet. And so what the legislation says is that you must reasonably consider their proposal. So the tenant would have to put the request in writing to us. We would then discuss it with you and see whether it's something that works. If there's a reasonable reason why you don't want a pet in the property, i.e., it's your home, you're going to be moving back to it in the future, and you've got a severe pet allergy, then that will be a legitimate reason to decline having a pet in the property.
Yeah.
Likewise, if it's an apartment and it's on the third floor, it's not ideal to have a dog or a cat
Yeah.
indoors in those types of properties.
If you've got a leasehold, yeah, if you've got a leasehold property, an apartment, and it's part of the lease that you can't have pets in the property. Again, that's I mean, the way the legislation is worded is you can't unreasonably say no. Is that
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you've got to have a good reason. But at the end of the day, if you've got um 20 tenants that want to let your property and one of them's got a pet and 19 of them haven't, then you'd probably go for the one that hasn't got a pet, I would imagine. But what this is during a tenancy, if a tenant then moves in and goes, "Oh, I'd really like to get a dog," we've got to have a good reason for it now,
Yeah,
haven't
we
we?
just have to have that conversation and see where we can go with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Arab's law. This is something that isn't going to be implemented straight away. It's to do with controlling condensation and mold in rental properties. It is going to be implemented into the private rented sector, but there's not an implementation date as yet. But it's just going to be there to set legal expectations and frames for landlords to address any property issues if a tenant reports anything. So nothing to do on that at the moment. It's just something to be aware of that it's coming through. And again, decent home standard. This again is going to be implemented just to make sure that tenants have quality living conditions in the PRS. Now, our properties are well maintained that we look after, so this shouldn't be a worry. It's just another thing that we just need to just kind of keep an eye on and make sure that properties are up to
Yeah, but when we do an
repair.
inspection,
Yeah.
we follow the guidelines of the HHSRS, don't we? And yeah, there's how many different hazards are there on the HHSRS? There's like
27 or 29,
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
there's 27 or 29 different hazards that that councils can basically fine landlords for, and yeah, that part of our inspections is we've got that lens on us that we were looking out for all these hazards. So this really, it's just another layer to that, really, just sort of formalizes
Yeah.
it a bit more, doesn't it?
That's
Really,
it. Yeah. And if when we're inspecting the properties, we're keeping an eye on them and reporting back to you to make sure that
absolutely.
anything that crops up is addressed then. And another coming soon, I think, for this, the
Yeah.
digital private rented sector database. So once the database is up and running, all landlords will have to register themselves and the property on this database. In Wales, we've had a similar thing called Rent Smart Wales, where landlords have had to register their property and then register themselves as being the landlord.
This isn't the same. They
It's
don't
not
have to be licensed, do they?
No, they don't have to be licensed like you do in Wales, but this is just going to be a centralized database that's going to be available online for tenants to be able to see that landlords have registered their
Yeah.
property and to make sure the properties are compliant. So I think there's talk about once it is up and running that landlords might have to, or agents might have to provide proof of like certificates and things
Yeah.
to make sure so tenants can basically make an informed
Which isn't a
decision
bad thing.
when they're renting a property. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And I think, to be honest, for landlords like you who use an agent like us to manage the property, this is just not, this isn't scary, because at the end of the day, all of our properties are compliant. We have all the
That's
safety
it.
certificates. We've got all your details. It's all fine. I think for you perhaps your self-managed landlords who, perhaps aren't as compliant, or aren't as good at auditing all the tenancy files, this sounds a bit scary because you've got to get all your stuff in order. I think as well with this, it's worth mentioning, I would imagine there'd be some sort of cost to register. um, we won't be talking thousands of pounds, but in Wales to register, how much is the registration?
£33.50 if you do it online. It's a bit more if you do it
That's
by
is that for
paper.
5 years?
5 years.
5 years, yeah, yeah. But I would imagine there'll be some sort of cost, because obviously someone's got to set this up and
Yeah.
maintain it. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not up and running yet. Government are still working out how it's going to look and how it's going to work. So when that is something that needs action on, we'll obviously let you know. And again, new ombudsman service. This is something that will come in as well. So this will be a complaints resolution service. So if landlords and tenants have complaints between them, rather than going to court to battle anything out. There'll be an ombudsman that can help resolve any disputes and basically try and sort of get resolution.
Yeah, and again, I just see this. I don't see this as a bad thing at all. I just think this is a positive. It's just raising the standards of the private rental sector.
Yeah,
If you're watching this, the likelihood is, you're a good landlord who wants to know about these changes because you're a responsible landlord. So you don't need to be worried about this,
no,
because you're doing the right thing. You're watching some training about, what you need to be doing, to stay compliant. I think again, this is another thing for those. I don't like call it. I don't like the term rogue
rogue.
landlord,
Yeah,
but there is a market out there that perhaps aren't as organised as yourselves and us. When it comes to managing tenancies, and I think something like this is really going to trip that part of the market
yeah,
out. But if you're watching this as one of my clients, you don't need to worry
yeah.
about that.
Okay. And then this another change is that it's going to be unlawful to discriminate against tenants who are on benefits or have children. So this isn't something that we need to worry about, really. I think we already kind of practice this. We don't
Yeah,
look to discriminate against tenants.
this has been phased in over the last few
Yeah.
years as well, isn't
And
it?
if we market a property and you have multiple applicants to choose from, then you are within your rights to choose the best suited applicant for that property. We will obviously discuss that with you. It's just there is a ban on discrimination. So if a landlord is found to discriminate against somebody or a tenant believes that they have been, there will be fines involved for non-compliance.
Yeah,
And this is something that came in actually at the end of last year, quite quietly. As
sneakily,
part
in
of
my opinion.
as part of the Renters' Rights Act, the local councils now have strengthened enforcement powers. So what that means is a council has the right to walk into an office or contact a landlord and ask to see the property file, and often at short notice, so that they can go through it and make sure that a landlord is compliant with their paperwork. Now, because you're using us as your agent, we have compliant paperwork files. We've got a strong CRM system that makes sure it's all kept in one place. It's easily retrievable. So
Yeah,
if
we
the
do regular
council,
audits on it
yeah,
as well, so this doesn't worry us
if
in
the
some sense.
council ever requested anything, we would be able to provide it at short notice. But they're looking to make sure that landlords are complying with the legislation.
Yeah,
If they're not complying, then they will be issuing fines, and the fines are quite heavy. It's like £7,000 for each
minimum. Yeah.
breach, and it increases the more breaches there are. But it's just something to make you aware of. You don't need to worry about it because we make sure all the files are compliant. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
and I think that brings us to the end of our
Yeah.
update.
And I think, yeah, it really, I think the message is don't worry.
Yeah,
Change isn't always bad. There's quite a lot of this that I actually think is really good because it's going to improve the sector. And if there's any questions that you've got at all, there will be a link on or probably in the comments of this video, and we'll also send the link out with the video when we email it out to you, where you can actually book a call with us. We call it a tenancy health chat, but basically you can put yourself into one of our diaries, one of our team's diaries, and have a chat about any questions that you have. All of our team are trained on all of these changes. We know what's going on. So if you're unsure about anything at all, ask us. This is what you pay us for, basically.
yeah,
We are here to support you. But yeah, just to really sort of end on, the big thing here is don't panic. We're here to support you. Um, it's not as bad as the press make it out to be, because that if the press dumbed it down, it wouldn't make an exciting headline, would
well,
it?
no, that's
You
it.
know, so,
They wouldn't have anything to write about them, would they? So
no, exactly. So yeah, thank you very much for
yeah,
watching,
thank you.
and we will speak to you soon.